Hello, all. I'm Mike Thomas. Welcome to Regulated Habits Meetup. This is week 10 officially of focusing on the theme of the compassionate warrior. That is, finding your inner strength inside without that violent association that tends to go with the warrior archetype. We're using the warrior archetype in as much as it connects you to your inner strength. So, today's focus is on mindful movement, using fitness to connect with your inner warrior. And it's important to recognize that when you focus on mindfulness, that is your senses in the present moment, it activates more lateralized circuits in your cerebral cortex of your brain, and it lowers the stress response. Okay, so mindful focus in the present moment on your sensations lowers stress response. When we get stuck in our heads, thinking about the past or worrying about the future, these are all ways of focusing that switches more to centralized circuits in our brain, what's known as the default mode network. And the default mode network, when it gets overactive, overused, out of balance with focusing on the present moment and our sensations, we end up increasing our stress response. And this is unconscious stress. When we talk about stress, very often we're talking about conscious stress. Conscious stress is the idea of, okay, I had some tough things that happened at work today. I had an argument with a friend or a spouse or my parents or my kids. These can be stressful in a conscious way. But what I'm referring to is unconscious stress. That is all the signs that show up in your mind, your body, your emotions, your relationships that affect things in more of a long-term way. So if you're experiencing chronic anxiety, if you struggle with depression, if you have digestive issues, if you have trouble regulating your emotions, if you can't find the words when you're trying to express something, and you just don't seem to be able to connect to your cognitive resources, all these are examples of unconscious stress that have been held in the body too long. So whenever you have unresolved trauma, that results in unconscious stress. Whenever you experience chronic stressors that may be small, but they build up over time and we don't release them, that results in unconscious stress being too high. And it can affect your energy levels. It affects your weight management. You might gain too much weight. You might be underweight. Your hunger might be disconnected in terms of awareness of what you need in terms of nutrients from your food. You might think that you need something that you don't. That's actually an addictive pattern. You might be disconnected from your hunger completely and you don't eat when you need to. These are all signs of unconscious stress. And so it's really important to distinguish unconscious stress from conscious stress. And when we talk about stress management, particularly in this meetup group, Regulated Habits, I'm going to show you ways of connecting to your mind and your body that allows you to lower unconscious stress. And this must become a habit because we can do something temporarily, but if we don't change the overall trajectory of our habits, well, unconscious stress will continue to result in all of those types of symptoms that we all know too well. It's all too common in today's society. We have stress and corresponding tension in the body that leads to numbness, leads to those symptoms that I was describing. So welcome. Thanks for joining today, Janine. Everyone else is joining over the recording and is going to check out the recording that I will post on the Facebook Messenger chat, as well as on YouTube privately. Just so you know, anyone who joins the group and participates, this is private, only available for members to view and learn from. So, and then whenever participants are not here live, and I just do recordings, those I will post publicly so more people can become aware of what this meetup is all about. But again, thank you, Jeannie, for joining today. And earlier, before I turned the recording back on, we were talking a little bit about where you are with your habits. So what's going on with your habits as of late?
Hi, I'm back. I haven't been here for a while. I've been luckily blessed with a lot of face painting jobs, I was telling Mike. And you may have seen the video. I made a habit tracker and shared it with Mike, and he shares it with everybody in the group. And I was really loving it for a while, and I was on it, and I was flying high, and I was feeling good. And then back in February, like I got the flu and it lasted for like 4 weeks. And oh,
That's the habit tracker, by the way. Just putting it
okay.
on the
I was like,
screen
what's
for everybody.
happening? Okay.
Janine created this, and this is something that you can get if you become a part of Meetup, Regulated Habits Meetup group. This is just one page in a 27-page booklet of all the possible habits you can detail. And this is one sheet that goes over all the different habits, and you can see there are 31 possible days you can check off for each of these habits. It helps you keep it organized. Thank you, Janine. I just wanted to quickly show everyone that what you
No
were
problem.
referring
And I
to.
like it because it's on paper.
Mm.
I have a couple on my phone, but I do like it is I guess Mike would probably say it's like a dopamine hit when you circle it, because I read a lot about trying to gamify your habits, and that is really helpful, because if we think about how rewarding it is when you play a video game and you win or win at anything. And I have another habit tracker. It's a walk fit one that every time you meet your 10,000 steps, it rewards you. And but the thing that cracks me up about that habit tracker is when you don't meet the goal for the day, it puts a little couch. So I guess signifying you were a couch potato today. You didn't, and so you sometimes it's, and even with, as you know, I'm a teacher, like kids in school, it's more powerful to for our brains to think about, all right, well, I don't want to get that couch. I don't want to be a couch potato today. So that's kind of motivating for me. So anyway, I had a big setback with the flu because it lasted like 4 weeks, and it affected my mood too. And it just took me a while to heal from that and to rest. I'm not the kind of person who likes to rest. My kids are, Mom, you're not getting better because you don't actually rest. I mean, so it was taking me a while, and I'm finally back on track. And normally I would think I would beat myself up about it, but I just kind of like gave myself the grace this time, and like, don't worry about it. You were sick. It was out of your control. These things happen. Um, and just, I think there is a lot of unconscious stress. Um, because being sick, I was doing a lot of scrolling on my phone and paying attention to what's going on with the world, which is stressful for many of us. I believe it's designed to be that way. I feel lucky that at least I'm aware of that, to try and not let that suck me in, and get me down and depressed and off my game, which is what was happening from February till about now. Um, and the last 2 days have been really great. As far as the steps, I finally didn't get the couches, so I feel just those 2 days of not doing it, and now I'm like ready. My sneakers are on now. I'm ready to either go for the walk while I'm listening or do it again, because it does help me to get 10,000 steps in every day by adding just that walk in, and just that little one thing that you do, and you can check that box or fill that circle, kind of has that ripple effect where you're doing the other things. The protein, I have this protein. Where's that protein? It's on my fridge. Mike has it. I'm trying to eat more protein and lift more weights, and normally I would be really overwhelmed and focused on, oh well, I didn't do that, but yeah, just all the things that I've done with Mike and the mindset and the mentality. And this is over many, 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 what's it, like 10 years that we've been working together doing this. It's
Yeah.
like not something that happens overnight, but Mike has always told me celebrate the small steps. And a lot of people that teach about habits and productivity and success and things like that, they all say the same thing, that you have to just celebrate your small wins. And
Absolutely.
it's a lifetime. It's a process. It's a process, and I will say the getting the sunlight in the morning, the getting out in nature. I have a treadmill in my basement, but I prefer to walk around my neighborhood and say hi to the neighbors walking their dogs and look around at my neighborhood and be able to feel grateful as a single mom to be even in this nice, beautiful suburban neighborhood with parks that I can go to walk around and um, things like that. And I'm just happy to be back. Like I said, I was on a little hiatus there, and no, was there anything else that we were saying before that I missed?
No, no, you covered it all and more. So thank you for sharing all of that. There's so much that we can focus on. And what Janine was just expressing there is a great example of someone who's been working on their habits, and you're also giving yourself, like you said, giving yourself the grace to recognize that no one's perfect and that it's a process, and that when you fall off, you just start right back where you left off, and that process allows you to slowly build momentum. And it's all about celebrating those small steps and recognizing that it's a long game. And if you look at the book The Compound Effect, you and I have talked about this a bit. um, Improvement actually needs to be a lot smaller than we think. It's about 1/10 of 1% of whatever you're working toward. You only work toward that tiny fraction of a percent every week of improvement. And if you take that pace, it's not only going to be sustainable because it's such a small step, but it will become habitual and it won't feel overwhelming. And the mathematical formula of the compound effect of changing your habits in this way is it takes about 9, sometimes 10 months, and then you start to notice drastic changes. 7 or 8 months, believe it or not, you don't notice huge things. Yeah, there are some things you notice right away. You'd feel better when you're getting that dopamine hit of checking off those boxes. Yes, I'm doing this good habit. Okay, awesome. You will feel a little bit better emotionally. You'll feel a little bit more focused. You'll feel a little bit better physically. If you're working toward dropping body fat, you'll start to notice changes. You'll start to notice your clothes fitting better. All these wonderful things that happen as you engage in these great habits. But something magic happens after 9 or 10 months of consistency with these small habits that you celebrate and give yourself a sense of gratitude for. Is that the growth becomes exponential. What you've been building in that foundation through all of those months provide this foundation that allow you to spring off of and create incredible results that you would not have been able to do if you didn't get consistent with those habits in those tiny little ways for that consistent long period of time. And so there are two simultaneous things that are going on there as you make the improvements. One, there is a momentum that's created from consistency. So someone recently described to me this metaphor of, imagine that a room is cold and it's just like 7 degrees below freezing, right? And every time you follow through with your habits, the room raises up 1 degree. But if you stop, it starts over. And every time you go up, maybe you go up 3 degrees. Okay, it's still frozen. The thing, the water in your room is still a frozen glass of ice, right? But once you hit that momentum point in this metaphor, it's 7 days, you reach the point where you're above freezing, and all of a sudden you notice, oh, but my glass of ice is now water. It's transformed. Something happened. And what allowed that to happen? It's this gradual growth of setting the foundation over time consistently, which is why it's important to make those habit changes small. Because when we do that, we're much more likely to follow through. We're much more likely to make it a habit. So it's automatic. We don't have to think about it anymore. And so that's one side of the experience. The other side is this idea that, well, if I wasn't consistent, then I'm starting back at zero each time. That's not 100% accurate. Every time you're working on your habits, even if you stop for a couple of months and you come back to it, there's a muscle memory to the experience of everything you've ever learned. Your body remembers on a level that your mind might not. And so it starts to feel automatic in a faster way because you've put in that time before, even if it wasn't consistent. That's okay. This is another opportunity to offer yourself some grace, just like riding a bike, they say. So I'll use that metaphor here. When you pick back up, you have momentum that has already been built from all of the time that you've put in before, even if you've taken a break, even if you've so-called fallen off the wagon. There's never a bad time to start up again. And whenever you can create momentum in any of those areas, whether it be your physical habits, talking about the 4 pillars of nervous system regulation now, physical habits like light exposure, water, sleep, physical fitness, stress management, all of those things are physical level of nervous system regulation. And then you have your environment. What is in your environment that may be triggering you into a survival response? How can you minimize those triggers? And that brings us to the 3rd pillar of relationships, particularly attachment relationships with our kids. Those are attachment relationships with our parents. That's attachment relationship material, and intimate relationships. These all bring up very powerful responses in our nervous system. And so a lot of our environmental triggers have to do with our relationships. So those, in a sense, are kind of like the same pillar. And then finally, we have your mental habits, the way that you view the world, the way that you talk about yourself and other people. These all indicate whether you're in survival or in safety. And in safety, neurological safety, that is, you have more capacity to emotionally regulate, to reach your cognitive resources so that you can think clearly, so that you can be compassionate with yourself and with others. All of these things compound together: physical habits, environment on an unconscious level, relationships, and your mental habits. These all contribute to your regulation. So if there's one of those 4 pillars that feels like, man, that's a real problem area, my relationships are dysregulating me like crazy, well, that's an area to focus on. If your physical habits are all but non-existent as far as focusing on consistently changing things that will help you with your health, like your diet, like your water intake, like your exercise, well, maybe that's the area to focus. And maybe it's, just simply looking at your environment, like, okay, my environment's a mess. I need to figure out a way to organize things just a little bit better so that when I wake up or I walk into a room or whatever the presentation of that environment is, if initially I'm like, oh, I don't want to do anything, look at all these things that are in disarray and I can't focus until I clean that stuff up, maybe the first solution is to go into another environment for now. If that's not a quick fix, if you can't focus on your habits, go to a Starbucks, do some work there, get a clean slate, work on the physical habits of cleaning up your environment later. So these are all examples that I'm beating around the bush around. Okay, so what lowers our stress load, allowing us to reduce the unconscious stress that leads to all the symptoms I've described in the beginning: anxiety, depression, digestive issues, energy issues, weight loss problems or weight gain problems, and so on and so forth. These are all things that we can improve through our daily habits. And so, Janine, thank you so much for sharing your personal experience with that, because where the rubber meets the road is where we're imperfect. That's the important stuff that we want to share. So I deeply appreciate that you've shared everything that you have, because the way that you share it, I would say, is very authentic. You don't filter it. You just let people know, like, this is exactly what I'm doing. This is exactly how I fell off. This is how I'm starting up again. This is real. This is how people actually experience working on their habits and improving their mind and body health. It's not a perfect Instagram life picture, where like, oh, look at these vacations, look, this effortless life where everything's working perfectly. That's not how life works. And so your authenticity is deeply appreciated here. Thank you, Janine.
I'm muted. You're welcome. And then you said water. I want to show you my water bottle. My
Nice.
friend at school.
I love that. Let them.
It's Mel Robbins'
Yes.
new book. One of my coworkers bought them from Etsy, but this is my water intake. It has the no, it kind of wore off, but one of the little girls at school, do you drink all that? I'm like, I try. It's hard as a teacher to get your water intake because you can't just go to the bathroom when you want. So that's one of my But I remember you told me there's other stuff you can eat in the morning, but I try
Yes.
it.
Okay.
I know
So
you said chia seeds and watermelon and like
kale.
fruits and vegetables with a lot of high water. There are other ones.
Yeah. hmm Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, watermelon, chia seeds, kale. Fruits and vegetables when they're not processed have a lot of natural water in them. But in particular, watermelon and chia seeds are pretty aloe also really amazing for creating something called gel water. Now, I'm not an expert in this area, but I have noticed the personal difference when I ingest these things. Um, Instead of H2O, hydrogen, and oxygen there's actually an extra hydrogen and oxygen. And so it's H3O2. That's called gel water. And apparently, it more easily hydrates your cells than just drinking plain water. So, drinking plain water, definitely helpful. And when you have whole foods that have a high water content, the likelihood that your body will not only take in the water that it needs, but it gets into the cells more effectively when it comes in a whole food form. So, drinking water, yeah, definitely helpful. Definitely helpful. And processed foods do the opposite. They cost you water. They use more water to digest and utilize and to eliminate. So that's refined flours and sugars and uh, uh, processed oils and all the things that come prepackaged. With the ironically with the nutrition information listed. If there's nutrition information listed and it's prepackaged, chances are it isn't the highest quality food that you could be taking in. The higher quality foods are less processed. Okay, so that being said, let's make sure to get to our topic of the day. So I want to go ahead and bring up a screenshot of today's handout. So today is focusing on mindful movement using fitness to connect with your inner warrior. I just want to read through a little bit of this, and I want you to take in a little bit of this information. And then I'm going to take you through a guided practice that will help you to practice this way of lowering your unconscious stress load. So there are many levels of awareness in the body and mind. And the more mindfully you practice your exercises, the less likely you are to injure yourself and the more likely you are to improve more quickly, gain strength, flexibility, whatever it is that you're working on. So practice accessing layers of movement and sensation. And I'll go into more of what that means as we go into the physical practice. Start with the most subtle and move more deeper into feeling more sensations at a deeper level of the body and with more intensity. But start gradual. The nervous system listens most closely when you whisper. And so this is an opportunity to practice connecting to deeper awareness that way. So you want to begin all of your exercises with mindful awareness of your alignment and your breathing, which we will go over today, and the level of exertion that you're capable of today. As I progress through the different levels in this physical practice, you may notice that your body is telling you, maybe this is the furthest I should go. So if your breath starts to hold, that might mean it's a new thing that you're doing. Sometimes with new activities you're trying, we unconsciously hold the breath as we try this new thing. It's because it's uncertain. But as you become aware of that and you remind your body, oh yeah, make sure you're allowing the breath to flow. Okay, just notice, is it flowing deeply in and smoothly out, nice long, comfortable, smooth exhales, or is it using the mouth up in the upper lungs, more shallow? That's a sign that you're elevating in your stress levels, in the level of exertion that may be nearing your limit. And if you get to the point where you can't catch your breath or your breath stops altogether, even if you're focusing on it, that's a sign that you've passed your capacity. Okay. So you're going to calibrate based on your breathing first and your sensation next. So all of this will make a lot more sense once we get into the practice. So increasing your effectiveness of movement improves your sensitivity and your awareness, as well as your grace and power. And ultimately, what we want to work on when it comes to quality of movement that indicates a low stress load and reinforces that lower stress load is aiming for grace and power with our movement. Now, that isn't to say that everything's going to look like a ballerina right away, if that's even the goal. But what it is indicating is that you want to work toward noticing where are there imbalances in your movement. Where does it feel choppy? Where is there tension in the body? Where do you feel that your breath stops temporarily? Okay, pause. Allow yourself to flow in the breath and move there. And you're going to play with finding your edge of how far you can push yourself without overwhelming your nervous system. And again, the first sign is your breathing. And then underneath that, you can start to notice sensation. And the reason why we start with breathing before sensation in terms of indicating where you are in your stress load as you're going through your exercises is that your breathing indicates the mode of your nervous system in a way that's unconscious. Whereas sensation that you're aware of, by definition, if you're aware of it, it's conscious. You can notice what your sensations are telling you. Now, your sensations are the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. A lot of what's going on underneath that you become aware of over time as you practice deepening your awareness. This can be a great indicator as well, but in the beginning, your breathing will tell you a lot more about what you're doing. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and go into a practice. And what I'd like to start with is waking up awareness of your feet, your breath, and your alignment. So I want you to just stand for me and align your feet so that your knees and your toes are pointing the same direction. And if it's more comfortable to have them turn out, okay, allow them to turn out. But over time, we want to work on aligning your feet and your knees so they face forward, about hip width apart. That's, wider than shoulders. This is about shoulder width. This is hip width. Okay, you want to look at where your hip joints are, the center of your hip joints, and bend your knees just a little bit and align the soles of your feet, the arches in particular in the center, the center of your knee joints, which are bent, up into the center of your hip joints. Okay, and that aligns your legs. All right. Imagine a marionette string pulling the back of your head over your spine upward, so your chin gently pulls in, relaxing your arms. So if we ever lift the arms, allow your elbows to get heavy. Okay, this releases any unnecessary tension in the deltoid muscles here and your trapezius muscles here as you keep your marionette string tall. There are other nuances to alignment, but I would say the most important two are marionette string and what I call shopping cart push. Imagine pushing a shopping cart instead of with your hands on the handle, with the front of your lower abdominals. So as you push on that shopping cart handle, that's shopping cart's filled with heavy rocks. You're pushing it up the hill. Feel those lower abdominals engage. You can push with your fingertips if you want. Push in and feel for the solid engagement of those ab muscles, which tucks your tailbone, which drops and releases your lower back. So as you push that shopping cart up the hill, lead with that center, keep your marionette string up, and then allow it back down the hill as you step backwards. So as you step forward and back, lead from your center. All right, so now that we have the basic principles of alignment and movement, generally aware of your body in space, and this gets better with practice over time, I want you to now notice your breath. Okay, one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly. Notice what's moving. Is your chest moving up and down? Is your belly moving in and out? Those are the basic areas of your breath. You can also check the deeper inhales often will expand your lower rib cage here, the part of your rib cage that is more flexible, has more cartilage in there along with the bone. If you push in sideways with your hands in nice and tight on those lower ribs, as you inhale, try and widen your hands, get them to come apart. That's a very deep breath if you're able to get those ribs to expand down below. And as you exhale, allow your hands to push back in. Inhale, I'll push your hands apart by expanding your rib cage and allowing them to come back in. Okay, so now that we have an awareness of upper lung breathing in your chest movement, it's like if you're about to sigh and take a deep breath. Oh, that's usually a chest movement, often called baby breaths or belly breaths. The belly moves when you drop your diaphragm down. It expands, goes outward as you breathe in. So you may notice the belly going out on your inhale and the belly coming back in. You can actually practice this by laying on your back and putting a book or something heavy on your belly and getting the book to move. That also stimulates the vagus nerve. So that's a helpful way to achieve calm when you get the belly to move with your breath. All right. Just so you're aware of those dynamics, let's now move into layers of awareness in sensation. Okay. So what I'd like you to start with is a very basic experience of waking up your feet. So as you focus in on your feet on the ground, what I want you to do is try shifting the weight. So your knees shift over, kind of like you're skiing. If you were to ski, your knees would go back and forth, right? If you go to one side and hold there, feel the weight on the outside edge of one foot and the inside edge of the other. It's a gentle lateral ankle stretch. Pause there, take a breath, and then shift sides. Shifting to the other side, stretching the ankles. Feel the feet and notice where's the weight on the feet right now. And as you move, feel in real time as the weight shifts across those feet. Okay, this is the surface layer of your feet. You might feel it a little deeper because your weight is on your feet, right? Your body weight standing on your feet. Okay, yet another layer. If you have a chair or something nearby to hold for balance, you're welcome to hold onto that, maybe a countertop, and lift your foot in the air. And now try circling your ankle so that you feel the range of motion that's comfortable to circle that foot. So there's a slightly deeper feeling to doing this than to just shifting your weight back and forth. Because now you have to use those supporting muscles in your lower leg and your foot to move that foot around in a circle. And notice, what's your breath doing? Is it held? Is it flowing? Is it shallow? Is it deep? Okay, and you can try the other one, circling in the air a couple times each way, checking in with your breathing. Okay, cool. All right, so different ways of feeling the feet, just the surface of the soles of your feet as you shift your weight, a little deeper as you consciously move them in the air. Now let's put a little bit more pressure on them by taking your left heel and lifting it up, but keep the front pad of your foot on the ground so your toes are flexing back. And as you do that, it stretches a little bit of the muscles and the connective tissue in the sole of your foot. Each time you go up with the heel and keep that front pad and toes on the ground, it's stretching the sole of the foot. So do that very gently, up and down, forward and back. Breathing, noticing the sensation. Okay. Now that we've gone forward and back, try a gentle circle. You're still stretching the toes back, but now you're feeling for the stretching at different angles as you circle the heel. Now, there may be a certain amount of stretch you feel in the sole of the foot. Maybe you don't feel much at all. This comes with time and practice. Check your breath, see what it's doing. Okay, you can shake out any tension that may have formed there. Try it on the other foot, starting with just lifting the heel up and down as you flex the toes back, keeping the front pad of the foot on the floor. Toes are stretching back gently so you feel the sole of the foot lengthen. a couple times, and then try circle on that other foot. Both directions. Check your breath. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is have a seat and make sure you're in a position where you're comfortable grabbing your foot. If you can do that flexibility wise, go ahead and grab your foot and just gently stimulate the skin by massaging, pushing, squeezing, rubbing, feeling how those sensations are dynamically being experienced as you stimulate the foot. That is, you push on the foot, you feel it, right? But how can you feel the foot in different ways? Moving those fingers around, sliding, rubbing, squeezing the toes as well as the arch and the heel. Notice what your breath is doing. Let's do the same thing on the other foot. Notice if this foot feels different than the first one. Breathing, feeling, noticing how your breath is shifting as you stimulate that foot. This focus on your sensations is lowering your unconscious stress load. Gradually, slowly but surely, your stress load is going down. This is a great habit. Just these simple movements, focusing on your sensations. You might drift off into thought, get distracted. That's okay. The mindfulness muscle, you might call it, is when you focus on your sensations and you're working it. When you get distracted, it's like putting the weight down in this metaphor. Both are important. You need recovery as well as exertion. You need focus as well as letting the mind drift. They're both important parts. Just notice as best you can what's happening in your mind. Are you off in thought, or are you focused here on your foot? And you're breathing. Okay, now that we've stimulated both feet with the hands there, like a massage, I'd like you to stand back up again and try that circling of the foot where you stretch the toes back. But now I'd like you to try it a little differently. So before, when we did that circle, stretching the toes back gently, you may have noticed a certain amount of stretch in the sole of your foot. What I'd like you to do is slow down that circle and maybe make it a little smaller and keep reducing the speed and the size of the circle until you can get that foot to relax while moving. So often when we move, we create more tension. But can you move in such a gentle, slow, mindful way? You actually release tension as you move. You might barely put any weight on it at all. As you breathe and feel that process of slowing down, waking up awareness, you might notice subtle changes in the sensation of that foot, like temperature changes. I'm noticing cool waves of energy, it feels like, in my feet. And then part of it feels a little warmer. It's interesting. There's these various dynamic changes in temperature that I feel. Is it actually warmer or cooler? We don't know. It doesn't matter. It's what it feels like that's important. Okay, shake it out. Let's try the other foot. Again, making circles as you stretch the toes back, very gentle circles here. And I want you to focus on slowing down the circles and reducing the size of the circles until you feel your foot is relaxing in movement. Just a little more relaxed than it was. That's not easy to do. It takes focus. Actively telling that foot, it's time to relax. Relax, relax, breathe, feel it. Okay, you can shake it out. And I want you to just take note of as you stand now and feel your feet, notice how much more you are aware of your feet. With all of that process of waking up different layers of awareness, you might notice different parts of your feet that you didn't before, like your toes, your little toe, your second toe, third, fourth, up to the big toe. The ball of your foot, do you notice where the weight is? Is it more toward the inside or the outside of that front pad of the foot? You feel your arch compared to the part that's touching the ground. Maybe your arch is on the ground, or maybe it's really, maybe you have a really high arch. Can you feel that? Is there more weight on your right foot or your left foot? You can try shifting your weight. So you shift your body over so it's all on one foot. Notice how that feels. Is there more weight on the front or the back of that one foot? And then slowly, gradually shift your weight over to the other foot. Is it the same on that foot, or is it more to the front or more to the back? As you play with shifting forward and back now, left and right now, let's incorporate a Qigong exercise. So interlacing your fingers, as you shift left and right, I want you to make a gentle circle with your singular fist here. Try and relax your fists, your fingers, your wrists. And I want you to imagine that your center, just below your belly button, your navel, is leading the motion back and forth. And as you do that, your breath is leading the pace of movement back and forth. So your body's like a tree swaying in the breeze, grounded at your feet, feeling the different parts of your feet that have weight on it or no weight, depending on where you're shifting, and allowing a very relaxed arm motion that just naturally flows. Another metaphor, and we were just using the metaphor of the tree swaying in the breeze. You can also think of it like a piece of driftwood in the ocean. And the waves, as they flow in and out, are like the waves of your breath. As the waves crash to the shore, that's your exhale. Waves recede back into the ocean, that's your inhale. Setting the pace of where that driftwood is moving. And what's the driftwood? It's your center. Your center is your driftwood. And your arms are like sea kelp hanging off that driftwood. They follow wherever the driftwood goes. So your breath leads the pace, the mode of your nervous system. Which lead your center, your lower dantian, it's called in Chinese Taoist Tai Chi practice. Your arms are practicing relaxing and flowing with wherever your center goes. Moving from your center is a way of reinforcing a reduced stress response. It creates a cue of safety to move from your center. Relaxing your limbs so your shoulders relax with heavy elbows. Your hips are relaxed as possible. Your quads are working because your knees are bent. Your arms are relaxed, and everything that doesn't need to hold tension is gradually letting go. Like, for example, your jaw. Can you let go of the tension in your jaw as you continue to breathe? So this is a movement meditation. And we could go on and add different layers. There's the windmill movement that you could add in. There's all sorts of different foot stances you can move. You can do Black Dragon serves the tea. We can go into that on another day. Getting the whole spine and the dynamic movement of the arm and shoulder. All sorts of fun things, which we will go into another time. But just take note as you slow down and feel your feet and the rest of your body, perhaps noticing what your breathing's doing now. What's the experience like as we've now done these practices, this habit, this movement meditation, you might call it that last part, that reduces unconscious stress? Over time, as you practice this more and more, it becomes more of a normal for your nervous system. And so all of the inevitable stress that happens in our lives, it's part of being human. We're not going to avoid stress. Stress is actually a very important part of growth. But we want to make sure that stress is managed in a way where it doesn't overwhelm us, so that there's a balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic, rest and active, pushing and challenging ourselves versus rest and rejuvenation, where we recover and we regain our center again, going in and out. The hallmark of secure attachment functioning, which is the way we function on a nervous system level when we're the most flexible with our needs, our feelings, our emotions, our relationships. That's characterized by a regulated nervous system that has balance. It flexibly moves in and out of survival states with ease as we need them. If you walk into the street and suddenly a car comes, you jump out of the way. Think about it. Your sympathetic nervous system does its job. It uses your reflexes to help get you to safety. You don't think about, should I get out of the way of the car or not? Let's weigh the pros and cons. It's not helpful. We want to go into survival states when appropriate. When we're overwhelmed, we do want to shut down. That's an automatic response. But to stay stuck in any one of these survival states is where the problems happen. That's where we unconsciously build our stress load in a way that's not sustainable, where our normal, our set point, what's called allostasis. Homeostasis is balance of all the different systems. Allostasis is where our normal gets higher and higher stress load as our norm. And that's where anxiety becomes chronic. That's where depression can become chronic. That's where all of these autoimmune issues, digestive problems, and on and on and on and on, all of these problems we think are arising out of thin air. They're actually directly connected to our stress in our unconscious level, the unconscious level in our nervous system. And so habits like we practice today, mindful movement practices, getting sunlight exposure in the morning, when the sun rises, getting proper sleep, which by the way is reinforced and supports hormonal health to give us healthier sleep when we have that light exposure. Getting non-processed foods in our diet, having nourishing relationships, arguably the most important part of nervous system regulation is regulated relationships. All of these things lead to a flexibility that's characteristic of a secure functioning nervous system that allows us to be the best versions of ourselves. So we are at finishing time. Any other final thoughts, Janine, before we close out here?
No, it was just as you were talking, thinking just how important it is, because there's so many stressful unconscious things, especially when we're consuming all of this content that we're consuming nowadays. So I just heard, I don't think it was you, it was somebody, like, just sometimes I just have to stop and say, and put my hand on my heart and say to myself, like, okay, yeah, all this stuff is happening, but like, you're safe. Like, I have to remind myself every day, you're safe, you're safe. I consciously have finally accepted that, like, this is just the way it is. You have to do it. You have to say to yourself, you have to recognize and flip that switch, like when it's happening, when you're about to go into which one is it? Parasympathetic? I don't know why I always get confused.
Sympathetic fight flight, and it's actually another branch of the parasympathetic when we're in shutdown.
Right. Okay. There's a way. How do you remember the difference? I know there's like some little parasympathetic, sympathetic. Do you have a little trick?
So honestly, I don't think those two terms are very important. I would think of it like the traffic light analogy.
Yes.
So
okay.
Green light is
That's a
lower
lot
level.
easier.
Yeah. And then yellow
Right.
light is where we get mobilized, fight, flight, and then red light's shut down.
Yeah. So it's very helpful to recognize and it's been happening for so long. Just like I said, to just gradually like do this and just be like, all right, yeah, okay, I'm recognizing it now. I'm taking the steps toward recognizing it before I go into like a nuclear meltdown, and then having all these tools and be like, all right, yeah, I can go for a walk, or I can just do what you just showed us, which was, I'm glad that it's on a recording, because we've done that a lot of times in my in-person sessions, but I forget. So I'm glad. I was thinking that when I'm like, oh, good, this is recorded now. So I can watch that in the morning.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Which is very
it's a great thing to add to your routine.
valuable. Right. That's all. And I was just thinking, like, it's so helpful for everybody. Even kids. And I
Yeah,
see so many kids just get so dysregulated, and it's like, I show them things sometimes and I tell them about the breathing, and then, but we get all this pushback that we're teaching them like like it gets mixed up with like this other thing that it's not, to teach kids social emotional learning.
mm,
Um, but I don't think people understand that if you're dysregulated, which many of the kids are, or you're hungry, then you can't learn, right? You're not in
absolutely.
that zone where the zone of proximal development. So it is kind of necessary for us teachers to be allowed to show kids how to calm their nervous systems down. I think it would be like wonderful in schools, as you provided that people don't get it misconstrued with something that it's not. So yeah, I think that's all. Such valuable stuff. We got to get it out to more people and out to the world, and just especially to help people to cope with what they're seeing, bombarded with, which I believe is the goal. Yeah, I think it would help. It's just very helpful. That's all. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank
Thanks for
you. Thank
joining
you.
today.
Okay.
And everyone who's watching, thank you very much for joining this recording of Regulated Habits,
Yeah, it's
mindful
a good
movement
one.
using fitness to connect to your inner warrior. What's that?
I said it's a good one. Watch it.
Have a great day, all. Cheers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.